Coordinates: 13 degrees 35, S 172 degrees 20, W 13.583 degrees south 172.333 degrees west, minus 13.583. Minus 172.333 Samoa. 2 smaller, inhabited islands, and several smaller, uninhabited islands, including the Alepata Islands. The capital city is Apia. The Lapita people discovered and settled the Samoan Islands around 3,500 years ago. They developed a Samoan language and Samoan cultural identity. Samoa is a unitary parliamentary democracy with 11 administrative divisions. The sovereign state is a member of the Commonwealth of Nations as a Commonwealth Republic. Western Samoa was admitted to the United Nations on 15 December 1976. Because of the Samoans' seafaring skills, pre-20th century European explorers referred to the entire island group as the Navigator Islands. The country was occupied by the German Empire from 1899 to 1915, and by a joint British and New Zealand colonial administration until 1 January 1962, when it achieved independence. In July 2017, Tumail Alifano Werleta Swalauvitu became the head of state, succeeding Tui Atua Tupua Tamasis EFI. The Prime Minister Tuilapa returned to power after a landslide victory in March 2016. Beginning a fifth term as Premier, Samoa was discovered and settled by the Samoans' Lapita ancestors. New Zealand scientists have dated the earliest human remains found in Samoa to between roughly 2,900 and 3,500 years ago. The remains were discovered at a Lapita site at Mulaifanwa, and the scientists' findings were published in 1974. The Samoans' origins have been studied in modern times through scientific research on Polynesian genetics, linguistics and anthropology. Although this research is ongoing, a number of theories have been proposed. One theory is that the original Samoans were Austronesians who arrived during a final period of eastward expansion of the Lapita peoples out of Southeast Asia and Melanesia between 2500 and 1500 BCE. Intimate socio-cultural and genetic ties were maintained between Samoa, Fiji, and Tonga, and the archaeological record supports oral tradition and native genealogies that indicate inter-island voyaging and intermarriage between pre-colonial Samoans, Fijians, and Tongans. Notable figures in Samoan history included the Tui Mena line, Queen Salamasina, King Fonoti and the Fort Tamara Iga, Malietoa, Tupua Tamasis, Mataafa and Tumail Alifano. Nafanwa was a famous woman warrior who was deified in ancient Samoan religion and whose patronage was highly sought after by successive Samoan rulers. Today, all of Samoa is united under its two principal royal families. The Sa Malietoa of the ancient Malietoa lineage that defeated the Tongans in the 13th century, and the Sa Tupua, Queen Salamasina's descendants and heirs who ruled Samoa in the centuries that followed her reign. Within these two principal lineages are the four highest titles of Samoa, the elder titles of Malietoa and Tupua Tamasis of antiquity as well as the newer Mataafa and Tumail Alifano titles, who rose to prominence in 19th century wars that preceded the colonial period. These four titles form the apex of the Samoan Mati system as it stands today. Contact with Europeans began in the early 18th century. Jacob Roggeveen, a Dutchman, was the first known non-Polynesian to sight the Samoan Islands in 1722. This visit was followed by French explorer Louis-Antoine de Bougainville, who named them the Navigator Islands in 1768. Contact was limited before the 1830s, which is when English missionaries, whalers and traders began arriving. Visits by American trading and whaling vessels were important in the early economic development of Samoa. The Sullom brig Roscoe, in October 1821, was the first American trading vessel known to have called, and the Maro of Nantucket, in 1824, was the first recorded United States whaler at Samoa. The whalers came for fresh drinking water, firewood and provisions, and later, they recruited local men to serve as crewmen on their ships. The last recorded whaler visitor was the Governor Morton in 1870. Christian missionary work in Samoa began in 1830 when John Williams of the London Missionary Society arrived in Sapapaliai from the Cook Islands and Tahiti. According to Barbara A. West, the Samoans were also known to engage in headhunting. a ritual of war in which a warrior took the head of his slain opponent to give to his leader, thus proving his bravery. In a footnote to history, 8 Years of Trouble in Samoa, Robert Louis Stevenson details the activities of the great powers battling for influence in Samoa, the United States, Germany and Britain, and the political machinations of the various Samoan factions within their indigenous political system, even as they descended into ever greater interclan warfare. What most alarmed Stevenson was the Samoans' economic innocence. In 1894, just months before his death, he addressed the island chiefs. There is but one way to defend Samoa. Hear it before it is too late. It is to make roads, and gardens, and care for your trees, and